Hi guys, this is Luetin, and I just thought I'd give a very quick intro for this because I suddenly realised before I was about to create it that there's a lot of new subscribers who probably aren't aware of this series. Now I started it a long time ago, several months, 6 months, and it was really just a late night casual chat, not any specific topic, not necessarily about Battlefield, and I'm joined by other producers, other good YouTubers, and I've got a playlist down the side, so if you want to check out the other series, there's some great ones I've done with Fat Paulie and Deku Colin, etc., people like that, so I'm sure you will enjoy, and it's quite a long one. I will provide an MP3 download, and I hope you enjoy. Hi guys, this is Late Night Randoms, and joined by intheworksmedia, and or shall we just call you Jake?
Jake's fine.
Yeah. And this is obviously me with Luetin. So yeah, we're just talking generally about Battlefield and anything. I haven't put one of these up for a while, so if you guys are not sure of what this is, it's a kind of non-specific discussion period where I just kind of always record these very late in the evening, and I have a range of people on, and I've been meaning to speak to Jake for ages about doing a video, and we never got around to one, did we? Because we didn't get a chance to get on any of my proper discussion vids that I've done recently with Battlefield, but I absolutely must say I've got actually would you be free this coming Monday?
This coming one?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to check, but probably.
Okay. I'm going to probably get Deku Colin, and I don't know who else is around, but yeah, I'm going to be putting it's a video together. I want to talk about the future of gaming, and this actually came up on another video that I did the other day. I think it was actually my Battlefield roundtable, yeah, because we started getting really, the guys started getting really off topic, and I had to sort of say, guys, let's just leave it for another day and we can discuss it properly. So yeah, and then I was talking to Colin today, and I said, like, he was busy today, so that's why he's not here this evening, and I said, oh, okay, what day can you do? And then I thought, oh, okay, this is a good chance. What can we do for that day? So we'll do this future of gaming stuff. But there's a lot to discuss, and actually I could talk about it loads right now, but I won't, so I'll save it. Yeah, this is the thing. You start thinking of an idea and you want to just talk about it. But yeah, I need to speak to, the guys from Battlefield Friends as well.
I've never had a chance to talk to them, but I do know who they are.
Yeah. But I know they wanted to join in on that one. Like John said to me, he was like, that's a good topic. We want to get in. So hopefully they might come along if they're free. So, So what was it we were just talking about right there? We were talking
Tank destroyers.
Yeah, tank destroyers. That's right. See, you need to remind me because I just get so off topic. Yeah, we were talking about tank destroyers and how some people, don't rate them as highly as other vehicles. But I think like a really important thing to remember, and this applies to so many things, is that when something new comes out, new weapon, new tank, whatever, new vehicle, people always make like these first day judgments on things. They sort of see how it works within the first week or so of play, and really, it's not a very kind of smart way to look at it. It's the same way as kind of judging a DLC's gameplay on the first week, because it's not a kind of it's not a kind of stable period to judge something in, and with tank destroyers, I would say it's the same thing. I actually quite like them, and I think they have a lot of positives, but I think that, like, if people kind of judge them too quickly, you don't get to see the whole picture. And it's the same with things like artillery and stuff. I don't know if you've seen like Level Cap's video about the mobile artillery, but the same thing, when people get the initial sort of gameplay of it, but then when you start to unlock it, all the the attachments and perks and stuff like that, you see that there really is like a whole range of other things that you can do with those pieces of equipment. And I think until you've unlocked something, you can't really give it like a full opinion on it, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because I actually just did a segment on the mobile artillery, and I waited a while to do it because I was spending time with it, honestly. Like, I used it in the beginning, and I was like, okay, this is definitely going to be one of the harder vehicles to kind of get the grasp on. And I waited a while to kind of unlock some of the stuff, get the ideas of how they worked, because a lot of people, they unlock that, what is the airburst thing?
Yeah.
They unlock that, and they switch to that, and they never go back. And I found that, honestly, the first unlock is way better because it takes out tanks, it takes out helicopters, and it'll kill infantry at the same time. Now, granted, if you have the airburst on over an objective, people are going to panic when all these flares are running down from the sky and burning their flesh. But the main actual cannon on that thing actually worked the best. But then Another thing that I learned quite later on while using it is that you gotta have some sort of like proximity scan, or like
Yeah.
even the what is it, the proximity defense, where it
Yeah.
hurts the person, because it's so easy to see for those things.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of interesting that they add this quite specific attachments into things, and it can be the same with weapons as well. And I think really, like I often say on my videos and stuff, is that people really need to let go of this idea of like, this is my class, or this is how I play this vehicle. I never play like that when I'm playing. I always, it depends on your opponent, it depends on your map. So when people say, oh, they only run with one gun, I always think that's really stupid, because whenever I'm going into a new map, the thing that I'm always thinking is, okay, what kind of what kind of range or style does this map play on? Does it have a lot of close quarters? Does it have a lot of range? Like, for example, Karg Island, I will always go with a kind of slower, more accurate long range weapon, like the G3 or something like that, or often like the KH-2002. Something that's quite accurate and powerful at range, and you can really hit targets. You only need a few rounds, whereas if you have something that's more of a kind of burst fire weapon, something that you need sort of 3-4 round bursts all the time, it's going to be more difficult on those kind of more longer range open maps. Whereas if you're playing a more close quarter environment map like Metro, or what would be another good example, like Grand Bazaar or something like that, of course you're going to want to, you can take things like AK, F2000 and so on and so on. So yeah, I really think, you need to just kind of be aware of what's happening around you. And I've put up several vids recently where I've said about this, where the gameplay kind of should dictate not only how you play, but the weapons you choose, the equipment that you choose, and so on and so on.
Yeah, I think a good example, which kind of leads us back into our original topic, is people seem really reluctant to use the tank destroyers because they look at it and they see a vehicle that's like weak.
Yeah.
And it's easy to take out. But honestly, the best part about the tank destroyers in particular is the rush game mode. And I know a lot of people have hard feelings for armor kill rush. I suffer from some of those from time to time. I'm not really a huge fan of the way the vehicle balance works, but I think the tank destroyers are one of the most advantageous vehicles in this particular DLC, because you could rush in there and you just do circles around the objective and people can spawn on you and jump out. And a lot of people tend to overlook that you can have, how many passengers can go in there? 4?
Yeah,
I think.
Definitely, yeah.
What is it? Two, and then one in the back, maybe even?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top. I'm really bad at remembering specific things. I never pay too much heedance to it, but yeah, something like that, isn't it? I think it's probably 5 in total. I think you can have like four in the driver. I think that's it. But I mean, I've said loads of things before about. I was talking on my latest video about tank superiority on Bandar, and I said, like, you obviously want to get a lot of people on the flag and stuff like that so you can cap it. I mean, it caps quite quick anyway, actually. But whenever you're capping bases or something like this, there's no reason, and as long as you're working as a kind of coherent team and you don't have an idiot driver, when you hit a base or something like this to capture it, you can carry a lot of people on board, but get them to hop out when you're in a stationary position so you're not sitting there with a load of people in your vehicle. That's always a really irritating thing. In fact, actually, it's very irritating when you're playing on a random game and there's people who refuse to get out of your vehicle. It's very, very annoying. I hate that, especially if you've got actual teammates who are going to do quite well and they can't get in because the blueberries are just stuck in there. Helicopters are really bad for that when they refuse to get off the guns, and it's like, guys, seriously, you haven't got to kill the entire round. Please get out of the helicopter guns.
Those are the guys that people look for those montage clips.
Oh god, it's a nightmare, seriously.
Like the 5-man LAV blow-ups.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just silly. It really is. I mean, whenever we get on a base, if it's just me in the vehicle, with the driver, I may stay in because I've got the guns. I can change around different angles, and I don't want to get caught out or whatever. But yeah, if there's a lot more people, I probably will hop out and help kind of scout the area. I mean, that's the other thing as well, is if you're outside, you can probably defend the vehicle a little bit easier than if you're actually sitting inside, and it does prevent any kind of random distractions that you might get and stuff. And then when you're ready to go, you can just hop back in, so it's no big deal.
Yeah, I'd say 90% of the time, if I'm capping a flag and I see like some sort of vehicle there, I'll hop in, be it like the battle tank or like even like the third seat on the main tanks. I'll just hop in there. That way you don't get picked off.
Yeah.
Granted, it is, like I said, it's a risky move because like I was saying, I was playing the other day and this Amtrak comes like barreling down the middle of the road and they plant the objective and everyone's just sitting in the Amtrak, and I'm like, okay. So, I walk down there and I blow it up and it's a full Amtrak. And I mean, it's like, that's a lot of tickets they just wasted when those guys could have got out and, made a perimeter or heaven forbid, actually try to defend the objective, but they just sitting there and watch it.
It's one thing that I don't know. I genuinely think there was a very different kind of playstyle compared to in Bad Company 2 compared to Battlefield 3. And I mean, what's your kind of, because you play, I know you play on the Xbox, but you do play on PC. I mean, have you played Battlefield 3 on the PC, like pretty much from the word go?
Yeah, I've had both Xbox and PC from day one. I played beta and alpha on PC.
Yeah. So, you know, how would you sort of score the way Battlefield plays out in Battlefield 3 plays out for the PC compared to perhaps other versions of Battlefield so far? Do you think, I mean, a lot of people go, oh yeah, it's ruined now, and you know the player base is not so good, and it's all because of COD's fault, and it's all because they've marketed it the wrong way, and blah blah blah. Do you think that's like an accurate thing to say, or do you think it's just kind of people looking for an excuse, and it's pretty, you know, it's kind of an easy thing to, you know, it's pretty much like just putting 2 and 2 together, really, isn't it? It's not a very complicated theory, is it? I
mean, to me, Battlefield 3 was in its heyday. Like I enjoyed the alpha. I thought the alpha was a really good build. But when I was saying this when I was talking to the Shusty Bang guys the other day, is like, to me, Battlefield 3 was at its height during the Karkan DLC. Like when they first released that's when everything was awesome. You know, those maps were just amazing. Like I still think that's one of the best DLCs I've played in games. I mean, I know they were rehashed maps, but they were good rehashes. And to me, that was when Battlefield was the best. And honestly, I played a lot of that on Xbox and a lot of it on PC. And I can't say that, you know, the only really difference is the player count, honestly. Like players tend to do the same things. I mean, they tend to act the same. The one thing that I noticed on Xbox, and I've never played PS3, is like an MCOM plant is definitely more, I don't know, it's more important if they get the plant off against you, because it's harder to defuse on console just because there's so fewer players. There's less likely of a person to be in there to help you, if that makes any sense. And I noticed like on PC, you may plant an MCOM 5, 6, 7 times and it still gets diffused, where on Xbox, if you plant it, you know, if they get the diffuse off, that's pretty impressive. I mean, I have seen some games where they've gotten a lot of diffuses off, but you'd think it'd be the opposite. You know, more player counts means it's going to be harder to get the diffuse off, but actually I found that's the opposite, because with PC being faster paced, it turns into a lot of grenade spam fights, and people sit on ammo boxes and just chuck it in there. So I think Battlefield 3 has created a completely different play style. It's almost like you know, Bad Company 2, I think people got really lazy in Bad Company 2 towards the end, because, you know, the C4 on the objectives and stuff. And I think in the early goings of Battlefield 3, you saw that. You didn't see a lot of objective play, but I think now you kind of see a blend of people who really play the objective hard, but at the same time, they don't really pay attention to the objective. And I know that's kind of a counter point there, but it's like people will run to the MCOM and plant it and then just go off and look for kills kind of scenario. And it's like, you know, there's not that map control that I think existed a lot in Bad Company 2.
The thing that gets me often is that it's never complicated stuff. That's what really gets under my skin. It's not so much the fact that people don't do things, it's more the fact that they could do things that are so, you know, such like a minimal change to their game style. It really bugs me. It's stuff like, literally, you know, if there's guys coming on the right hand side of your position, okay, and everyone sees a red triangle and they're like, oh my god, blah, 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 and they go over there, and then all of a sudden, oh, they're coming on the left, and they run back, blah, 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 and they go over the other side, and it's just like they're just running back and forth, and at some point they're going to get, you know, 2 groups of guys coming at the same time, and, you know, all of a sudden the base is overrun. And
I think one of the things that really just grinds my gears the most is that the fact that they don't see the red triangle. It's like, I get killed so many times. Like, I've had so many like live commentaries are ruined because I make a comment about, oh my god, how did he not see that guy? And it's like people will run up behind him, you know, they'll be shooting, and there'll be just a dude just sitting there chilling, and it's like, how are you so oblivious that you can't see that? And I think that plays into a lot of things. I mean, I think that plays into us thinking, you know, everyone's going to be the best gamer in the world, but then again, you think about like basic skills in a video game, and if you can shoot your gun, I feel like you should be able to read your map.
I think it's this things like one of my ones I was ranting about. I did like a live com the other day, and I wasn't sure whether to post it up actually, because it was me pretty much throughout the game going, for the love of God, please do this.
I try to avoid those.
Yeah, but I'm not one to kind of shy away from putting up what I would classify as like realistic gameplay. So I don't always just post stuff which is me like kicking ass and racking up kills, or some ridiculous KD at the end of the round. I try to put stuff that I try to put rounds that I just think are interesting for whatever reason, whether it's because I did bad and I go, okay, look, we didn't have a good round here, but this is why, and something to take away from it. I wish more people would do that, because I always feel like I learn the most from the games we do bad in. The games which you do well, you tend to steamroll because the enemy team is stupid. It's not because you have some elite skill. It tends to be that the enemy teams suck. That's often why people do really well in rounds. So I think the games which you have which are really difficult, you lose bad, they're the ones where you learn, because you can see your errors and you go, okay, this is where we went wrong and we must remember to do this better. But yeah, it frustrates me. It frustrates me a bit because, I played a lot of different games, and more and more now, I find that people's kind of cooperation in games seems to be slim to nil. Like, people really don't work well as a team, whereas it used to be that you could just kind of hop into games, and for the most part, I mean, not all games, but for the most part on Bad Company and stuff like that, but also when I used to play World of Warcraft, you'd be surprised that the amount of random people who were actually just pretty good skill level, they would have a basic understanding. It seems more and more that FPS is getting to the point where it's kind of just like people have their own agenda and they literally have no interest in doing anything else. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, it's always been that way. Yeah, okay, there's always going to be that percentage. There's always going to be people who have no interest in it at all, okay? But I think more now. We've seen this. And I swear I blame, like, kind of, I don't know, I think it comes hand in hand.
I think it's the game makers, honestly. Because if you think about it, like, they're shifting away from tactical teamwork. I mean, if you look at Bad Company 2, and if you hop on that game right now, there will be people working as a team. You can type in the chat. And that's one of the few games, maybe not in its heyday, but now, even if you talk in the chat, you're not going to get insulted. I feel like if you type in the chat and it's like, hey guys, there's a guy coming from the right side, and you say that in Battlefield 3, you're going to get like cussed out by a 7-year-old kid who isn't even old enough to buy the game. But I think if you look at the offerings and the way Battlefield 3 is kind of evolving, it's starting to cater to fast-paced gameplay. I mean, look at Conquest Domination. I mean, that game type, in essence, sounds awesome, but when it plays, all it does is turn into Ring Around the Rosie, and it really just...
Yeah, I feel like there's more to it than that, because, yeah, you're right. I mean, people... Actually, again, I literally posted a video yesterday talking about a little bit of that, about predicting where to go and stuff. However, I don't think it's just a case of, like you say, running around capping bases, because I think that often people do make that kind of assumption because some people play it like that. However, if you're playing it kind of well, I think there is a little bit more to it than that. And it definitely comes down to the ability. You should be able to predict like where people are going to go in that, and if you can, then you can defend bases really easily. You don't need to stay on them, you just need to be able to move to a position before it comes down. And so I find that I actually like Conquest Domination, and I definitely like it on the close quarter maps and stuff like that, because it's a very different style of gameplay. And the standard maps still play out pretty well at the right speed and stuff, but if you want some like faster, more fluid gameplay, I really feel like those ones work really well, and I really like it. But again, I find it quite frustrating that people can't make some quite straightforward decisions. However, I have said this before as well, was when I played WoW and we used to play Arathi Basin, and it was pretty much like my game. It was the one that I loved the most. I played it like 24/7, and I guess I got very used to kind of the idea of capping bases and being able to predict where people were going to go. It's not actually that difficult, it's usually pretty straightforward. It's like, if you control A and B and they've just capped C, it's pretty obvious that they're probably going to go to the nearest one, so you can just move there. But then there's other things as well, as like, if you see that you have 4 or 5 guys at your B position, well, they're probably going to kind of be roughly aware of that if they may have 1 or 2 people, so maybe they're going to try and move around to A, so maybe you want to try and go in between and cut them off. And there's so many situations that play out like that, and it's really just about your ability to read the battlefield. See, okay, how many people do you have at any given position, and then from that you should be able to deduce a natural choice that they're going to make. And I think it's, if you think of them as kind of like, I always hate this because I don't want to sound really condescending, but if you think of them as kind of like AI, and I often say this, I like to think of Blueberries as computer controlled, because it takes the stress away from me when I see them doing random stuff, and I'm just like, it's okay, they're just computer, they don't really know what they're doing. And but it's more like, if you have sort of 4 or 5 guys in an area or whatever, and you see the enemy moving towards them, well, probably they're going to have 1 or 2 people kind of come into contact with that. Then the rest of their team are going to naturally react to that and go, ooh, it's a little bit hot here. Maybe we don't want to deal with that right now. We'll go to another position. If you can kind of work that out in your head, and I always feel like it's a bit like chess as well, where you should be thinking like several moves ahead, and you can kind of look at the pieces on the board and go, okay, I can see they're going to come here and here, and so I should think to move here. So you should be able to move in a kind of predictive way. And I don't know, this is always something that I've managed to do with FPS as well, even back to playing like GoldenEye. It used to really piss off my friends when we played GoldenEye, and I remember one of my favourite moments was when I managed to kill my friend on GoldenEye like 3 times in a row, and I'd managed to predict accurately just from kind of, we'd played the game so much I'd gotten used to kind of the spawn sequences and stuff, and it was literally, I knew where he was going to go, so I'd shoot him, run just a little way around the map to the corner, he'd just spawned, picked up a gun, bam, I'd hit him again, I'd run to the next position, hit him again. Now obviously, Battlefield doesn't work like that, but if you play something enough, and if you have an understanding of it enough, you can start to kind of predict choices. And I think that's why I like Conquest Domination the most. But this is where we come back to the original point, is that I think a lot of people maybe don't play it like that at all. They literally just go, oh, they've got C and B, and I'm at A, I'll go to B, then I go to C, then I go back to A, then B, then C, and like you say, they just go round and round, and they just run to whatever is the nearest enemy position, and they don't think at all about where's the enemy, where might they go, maybe it's worth me spending the extra 10 seconds to run to the farthest flag, which often I will do. If they're in the middle, well, okay, it's closest and I'm going to get some action, but it's going to make a lot more sense for me to run on my own all the way around to the third base, cap that up, and then they're in an unstable position. They don't know where to go then. Should they go to C? Should they go back to that base? And in the meantime, while they're confused, well, that's when you go for B, because you've split their attention. They don't know where to go. And with the help of your team, you've got a much better chance of capping at B. And then you're in an even stronger position, because then you've got 2 bases close together rather than having them spread apart. So, there's so many ways that you can play it out,
One of the things that kind of bothered me about the game type was it seemed like, you were pointing out if one person wants to hold back and stuff like that, is that the random spawn element of the actual Conquest Domination kind of detracted from the tactical side of things, because I know that on console, it's probably a little bit different than the experience we got on PC, but I had the hardest time in the world finding like low player count Conquest Domination servers. And I've even pointed out in past videos, I was like, look, I prefer to play 8v8 on Conquest Domination because it's more tactical, it makes more sense, 2 squads versus 2 squads, as opposed to 32 people versus 32 people, where there's absolutely no thought process. You just run around like an idiot, you kill, you don't think at all about the flag caps. And even though I think in essence, I think Conquest Domination could be an awesome game type, I think the way it was presented to us, the way the community kind of plays it, kind of just caters back to that thing we were talking about earlier, where you kind of just run around with the chicken with your head cut off. So that's why I was kind of excited for tank superiority. I was really hoping that was going to be, a more Battlefield-esque experience, a mix of infantry and tank at the same time. But I'm not really quite sure how I feel about it. I on the outside, I want to say I don't like it because I've had some bad experiences. But in the same respect, I haven't played it enough to really give it a fair chance. But from what I've played of that particular game mode, it turns into this standoff of, you've got like 5 or 6 recon guys with SOFLAMs just chilling in the back. Then you got like 6 guys with javelins sitting in the center of the map. So I don't know how it is on console. I think it was probably better because honestly, like the thing, even though if you increase the player count on PC, you still get the same amount of tanks from what I've experienced with tank superiority. So
Yeah,
there's always like this fight to get in a tank, and what you get is these guys who they jump in the tank destroyers, and maybe 5 or 6 engineers will be on top of it and or in it, and then the javelins come, and then they get 6 kills off
yeah.
that. So
It's quite
it's
interesting. I think whenever I seem to make a video at the moment, I always get the kind of like, which, the PC console thing come up. And, but I think it's like an unavoidable discussion point for almost anything, because you're kind of referencing two quite different game types. And, player count has such a massive influence on the game, and also, the scale that you play it at and so on, that it's almost unavoidable to talk about within the context of some things. And, yeah, when it comes to stuff like that, it has a big impact. But, more and more recently I've thought about it, and for as many negatives there are for having less people, there's actually quite a lot of positives for the things that you say. Often it can be more tactical. And actually, I was watching Colin, Decrew Colin's video earlier, and he was saying this exact thing, was that he was saying that basically, like, he was in a game of 64. Oh, that's right. It was Conquest 64 on Death Valley. And he was saying that, you can almost have no impact when you're working as a little team and stuff like that, because there's so many people. Whereas, when you play on the console and you have the 24 servers, so 12v12, or if you're playing, close quarters, 8v8, having a small group of 4, or maybe you have like a couple of friends as well. Often when I play, I have my own team, and there's often maybe 2-3 people I know come in, and maybe we're using team chat, or maybe we're not. And often I don't even need to with some of the guys I play with. They just know what to do. And you can have a huge impact in the game because there's less of you, so therefore your presence makes a more significant impact to the game. If you've got 64 people, you just don't have such a big impact. And unless you have a large group of guys, it just doesn't have as much impact. But for that reason, I think they both have their own positive and negatives. But
it's kind of interesting you brought that up, because the other day I was talking to some of my buddies I play with on Battlefield, and we were talking about PlanetSide, and like I was saying, it's not that I don't like PlanetSide, because I absolutely love that game. It's a lot of fun, it's a very engaging game. But the thing is like when you play it, you don't feel like you're like having an impact, It's like there's just so many people. And I mean, you can have good games, and you could have an impact sometimes, but for the majority of the time you spent playing PlanetSide, you're not having that huge impact. And that's kind of how I feel in some of the 64 player servers. That's why I try to avoid them. Like on Conquest in particular, it turns into this thing, like especially now with stingers, there's no chance that on armor kill that you can fly a helicopter. I don't care what dice says, it's more balanced. I've been a fairly above average helicopter pilot, and I can tell you this much, like even the best chopper pilots have basically just quit flying just because the 64 person servers where it was fun to rain fire down on people, and the skilled players would take out choppers, the jets, the other choppers, the AC-130s there to take down choppers. But now it's like you have to worry about stingers, and on those big servers it's like it almost gets to the point, it's like, why even get in air vehicles? Why even play in this? I mean, it's almost the same with vehicles too, because on the flip side, you've got everybody running engineer on a 64 player server. You're not going to last long because you're getting your brains blown out, and you don't really have a very big impact in the overall final score of the game. Like oftentimes, the scores will be either completely lopsided to the Russians or the US, and you don't see a lot of competitive games on 64 player servers.
One of my favorite things, one of my favorite comments that I get on my channel, for some reason as well, I have a lot of PC guys follow me. I think it's because I tend to talk quite sort of tactically and sensibly about gameplay and stuff, and maybe that doesn't happen so much with other channels. In fact, I think overall there isn't actually that many guys who are proper serious Battlefield commentators. There's a lot of crap out there, and I always try to sort of focus my stuff down. But one of my favorite comments people I get is when I'm talking about something, and they go, the comment that I get back is like, you wouldn't ever be able to do that on a 64 player PC server. And it's kind of like, but who the hell would want to anyway? It's like, seriously. Most of the guys that I know who do YouTube videos and stuff like that say that 32 is the optimum, for the reasons we say, is that 64 just ends up being this massive clusterfuck where everyone is just getting rammed into these little things, and unless you're playing on a large map with open abilities to move around, on some of those other the older Battlefield maps, honestly it can really be hard work. And I've seen plenty of gameplay. I haven't played it myself, but you can just see it. If you watch 64 player games, you just see the way it goes down. And I really don't think it's a good thing. I think 32 is definitely where I would want to be at myself. But
I agree. I think that's the optimal amount of players, honestly. I mean, if you look at like the server browsers though on PC, you have a hard time finding servers with that many people. I mean, they're there. I mean, I'm not going to deny their existence. They're abundant at times, but during the peak hours, it seems like the only thing that people want to play are massive 64-person servers. And that's not just Battlefield 3. That seems to be the case with all PC games in general. It's like more. And I think that feeds into this kind of run around with the chicken with your head cut off type thing. I mean, I don't want to say this because people might get offended, but the Call of Duty-esque mindset. And Call of Duty can have some tactics, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, if you're playing in a public match of Call of Duty, you don't really think much about
I think you can have kind of micro choices, and that's what it comes down to. It's not the same. You don't have a large kind of battle plan as such. You don't have like a grand sort of guy sitting in a map room going, we'll move 10 guys over here. It's not that kind of thing. It's more you make like micro choices based on what's happening in the game, what's in front of you, what are they using, how aggressive are they, what map are you playing on, what's your team tactic, and you make all of these kind of micro decisions like when you're playing. I mean, let's talk a bit about COD now, because we were gonna, and I think this is a good time to kind of bring it in as well. And it's I think I'm really interested in the Black Ops 2, I really am, and I'm going to be getting it, I'm going to be doing it. And I don't do kind of weapon reviews so much, but I may do a little bit, I don't know. I know you do loads, but for me, I don't do them so much. But I'm kind of more interested in those kind of like micro choices, because it kind of interests me more. I like the idea of sort of being able to kind of outthink your player. A lot of people, I often see this in comments as well on YouTube and stuff, and people go, you're reading into it too much, or you're taking it way too serious. No one actually thinks of it like that. It's a load of crap. People just run around, and that's what wins you the game. You're kind of like, well, when people win a game by running around and shooting, it tends to be that the other teams suck, and it's by luck more than anything else. It's definitely not what wins them the game. If people have a well thought out plan, you're going to lose every single time, and often it's not complicated stuff, as I always say. It's really not. It's just about having a well distributed team, mark your targets, keep every area covered, and you should be fine. But when it comes to COD as well, I mean, for sure, I've played games where I run around with an SMG and literally just fastest finger first, just blowing people away. And I've got COD gameplay up on my channel for people who want to see, if you just search back through, guys. And you can have a lot of fun with COD, but you can also you can take it quite serious. You can play it more serious, and it doesn't have to be just literally running around like a headless chicken going la 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 and just shooting everything that you see. There can be a lot more choice in how you play it and how you move around the map and so on, and thinking kind of carefully about your route. And that's the other thing, it's kind of mapping your route in your mind as you play. Like, okay, you're kind of predicting where you want to be, and knowing your map is so important, because knowing where you may get jumped on from, where could people be hiding, and so on. All of that stuff I find quite interesting. And
I think it's all about map navigation is the thing that people need to think about with Call of Duty. Because if you watch any of the really good players, it's not so much like, I don't know about maybe just like random public matches, but on the competitive side of Call of Duty, you notice like a lot of people move about the maps very meticulously. They don't rush out there. I mean, I'm sure when there's like a lot of people in certain areas, they will gravitate towards those areas, but they tend to positionally play very solid. And a lot of people take the wrong idea, I think, from Call of Duty. They look at it, it's like, oh, it's this inbred child that is only for like 12-year-olds. But on the flip side, I've been playing Call of Duty personally since I was in high school, which was a long time ago. I played Call of Duty 1, and it hasn't really changed from day one. I mean, it's still the same core game. They tend to just make it more complicated with some of the new features and stuff like that. That's why I'm kind of excited for Black Ops 2. I know being a Battlefield player, that a lot of people get I don't want to say butthurt, but that's really what it is. When when I talk about wanting to play Black Ops 2, because I really did enjoy the first one. And from what I've heard, the people who have played it, they've said, hey, these score chains and stuff are hard to get. And that's something that
Yeah.
I think that'll cater back to the days of old, of how Call of Duty was a more game based on guns as opposed to the things flying around in the sky. And that's one of the things that I really do enjoy about that, about the series. I mean, there's not a lot that you have to think about while playing. I mean, like you said, there's the micro decisions, but those decisions become second nature when you play it enough. Like, I noticed, like, if I hook it up right now and I went back and played it, I wouldn't be as good as I was 6-7 months ago, just because I'm not in that rhythm, the micromanage rhythm, I guess.
Well, it does interest me, and I really like the changes they've made. So for people that don't know, haven't bothered to read it, I mean, one of the major changes is that instead of having kill streaks, you have like these score streaks. So basically, like capping a flag, I guess getting assists or whatever, getting kills, I assume will still give you some scores, so I'm sure it will have an impact, but it won't be based on like, kill 6 guys, you get this. You gain points based on it, and that gives you the ability to unlock. The other really big change is the way that they're doing your kind of kit selection. So now you have I don't know the specifics off the top of my head, but basically you have a kind of amount that you can pick to load out your guy with. So you can now have like 6 perks, I think. So you can have like 6 whole perks if you wanted, but then maybe that gives you no attachments on your gun, and maybe you don't get able to take grenades, etc. But you can run it the other way. Maybe you take only 2 perks, you have like 3 attachments on your gun, and so on and so on. So there's loads of customization, and it comes with pistols and grenades and other tactical equipment and stuff like this. So there's loads of stuff that you can load out, and you really can make some quite custom classes based on what you can load out your character with. And it's very, very interesting, because I don't think you're going to have so much the kind of I think it's kind of a tough balance to make. I actually think sometimes that games can play out better when you have a more limited selection. You look at stuff like Battlefield 1943, you can't even really choose your kit that much. You literally just get what you get and you start, and that kind of, it's great because it kind of throws everyone in and you're almost kind of on the level, and everyone is kind of balanced, so it means you immediately get straight into the gameplay, and you don't have all the fuss of refining kits down. On the other hand, I find that like if you have the ability to refine kit, and a certain gun is a little, micro balanced a little bit the wrong way or something, then everyone kind of gravitates towards it. But I think if you give even, so if you're kind of in the middle and you have sort of some ability to change things, but not tons and tons, then, people tend to kind of go, well, 60% of this stuff isn't so great, and it means that everyone ends up using only a couple of certain bits. But I think if you give even more customization, like they're doing with COD, if they give you more ability to change and really create a certain class to run with and stuff, and also it's going to work a lot better with COD than Battlefield, because Battlefield has such changing environments just from map to map and game to game.
So many variables that you have to factor in.
Yeah, because of the way it plays. Whereas COD, it really is like a kind of
closed environment.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a.
It's kind of like a cage match. I mean,
yes,
even though the maps are all different and they all kind of have different ways they play out from time to time, it seems like every match becomes predictable in Call of Duty, just because you are in this like 100 feet area where the flag is going to be, and everyone tends to gravitate towards the B flag on Call of Duty. So
but you see, that's and for that reason, therefore, being able to change your kit around in quite numerous different ways therefore becomes kind of more valid, because on Battlefield you often long range map, this is my setup, or tank map or whatever, you often have in your mind a kind of preset choice. You may have a choice out of 2-3 guns, but the rest you'll probably discard because they don't really suit that map or whatever, unless you're silly and you always pick the same gun on every map. But
M16 for life.
Seriously, people have a thing with the M16, and it comes back to, basically it's like the M16, I never really considered it overpowered. What it was is it was just too good all around. That's the problem. And I really don't like the way people kind of pigeonhole things and they make them too, it's overpowered, or they nerfed it or whatever. It's people need to stop thinking about it in those terms. it's the M16 was never overpowered, all right? It wasn't ridiculously better than loads of other guns. What it was it was just better in most general situations. It wasn't that amazing at long range. It wasn't that amazing at short range, but it handled well in short and long range, but it was very good in medium range. So therefore, overall, it felt like it was pretty good and in nearly every situation that you would play in, compared to other guns which maybe were only good at long and maybe then reasonable at medium, or vice versa, they were very good at short and not too bad at medium. So I think that's really what it was. And as your starting gun, it pretty much, it should be good in all situations. It should be a good general weapon. I think that they just made it a little bit, ever so slightly just too good in the kind of extreme ends of it, and so it really did just need a little bit balanced up. But I don't like it when people just start going, "Oh, it's overpowered." It's
you can't use them in videos because people complain about it.
It's ridiculous.
I really think, like, if you think about it, like if you think about the overall like best balanced weapon in the game, I think like the AK-74M is a prime example of how a basic starter weapon should be, because it's got low recoil, low rate of fire, pretty fast reload, but it kind of it encapsulates what a all-around good weapon should be. Whereas the M16, that thing outshoots from the hip like 50% of the weapons in the assault class, and needless to say, it was like on the top tier of the engineer weapons. So an engineer weapon that shoots 800 rounds per minute can get beat quite easily by the M16. And I think that caused some balance issues, because until close quarters DLC, we didn't see anything in the engineer class that could compete even with the M16, in my opinion. So now that there's some close quarters weapons, I think that it was a little bit more balanced, but people were so used to using it, they just could not let it go.
You can kind of see why they do it, because they're obviously thinking, okay, we need to give people starting out a reasonable weapon so they can kind of stack up against other things. What I would actually say is that what they should do is give them a gun, like you say, something that maybe kind of encourages them, like maybe it's got quite good accuracy and so on and so on, but it kind of requires a few more rounds to put in. Maybe make it not that powerful, and then in doing so, it means that people have to get more rounds in with that gun, and it's going to kind of encourage them to be more accurate. So when they upgrade to another weapon, they already kind of have that. I think that they should go with that. Grade the weapons in a kind of teaching. It kind of encourages you to use it in a certain way. Whereas if you make it a very kind of balanced, good all-around weapon from the word go, like you say, there's no needs to change up because you already have a good gun already.
Yeah, I do agree. I think I feel like their patch of the M16 was kind of ridiculous. It was like, okay, here you go. It was like them just like scooting a plate of like food to you. Is like, okay, here you go. This should hold off the dogs for a while. But it's like, I don't think it was really one of those weapons that really had to be tweaked that much. I think honestly, buffing other weapons was the way they should have gone about that, because reload speed is something that people tend to gravitate towards. And the M16 was just the fastest, and now basically all they've done is created another one with the M416, but I don't really think that that's overpowered, do you?
I don't think so, really, no. And I think that there shouldn't be so many generic changes in things all the time. I think, like I've said before, I think the only time you should really make changes is when something starts to become like an epidemic of a problem, like the USAS and stuff like that. When you start, well, seriously, for a while, a lot of people were complaining about it, but it wasn't really a big problem, even though people were complaining about it. Like, I would go in a game and maybe like one or two people might have it. It doesn't really have a massive impact on the game. Those people probably ended up pretty crappy by the end of the round, But I then started going into games and, and up until that point, I was like, seriously, it's a bit irritating sometimes, but it's not a big problem. Then I started going into rounds and 6-7 people in a team were using it. And you're like, whoa, hang on a minute. Now this is just getting stupid. Because what they're doing is, people by choosing that all the time are actually kind of breaking the mechanics of the game. They're making it play out really crap by choosing all the same weapon, all the same setup, basically. And it just becomes tedious and irritating, and it just kind of ruins games. And often, we would have teams like that and we would still win. We'd still beat them, but it just kind of ruined the gameplay. And I think
it becomes repetitive.
Yeah, it's just tedious, and you're just like, oh, for Christ's sake, you still win. And we had games where we actually kicked their ass, but it was just annoying. It was like, for Christ's sake. So it's like when you come up against a whole bunch of people and they're like running. I get this all the time in close quarters. It's really funny. So many people running around with bolt sniper rifles. I've seen it more recently.
I'm pretty guilty of that, I'm not gonna lie.
No, people running around with bolt sniper rifles, and this guy, he killed me like twice out of the whole round, and you check his KD by the end, and it's like COD always as well. COD is so bad for it, and it's so irritating. People running around trying to do these elite quick scoping things, and it's like they always finish the round like 4 and 20, and it's like, for the love of God, it's like, I'm sure there's some guys out there who are really elite at it and can just like dominate using it and stuff, and you see them on these videos and they're like pew pew pew, and they're getting like kill after kill after kill, and it's like, yeah, okay, you're doing pretty well there. But in the grand scheme of things, most people are really poor at doing it, and it's just kind of funny to see people doing that kind of stuff in game. Yeah, I don't know.
I think an example of that is I'm plagued by this quite often, and the more I talk about it, the more I kind of open myself up to people doing it to me. But like with all the ability to follow people around a lobby, a lot of people will follow you to get your tags,
Yes,
and there'll be a guy who will get your tags, and before you know it, you'll see yourself in like a YouTube montage of pub stars that have been knifed. I mean, I've probably seen like 15 different videos of like guys just running into lobbies knifing YouTube guys, and I think about it, I was like, that's great, but you also went like 3 and 15 trying to knife one person. And I mean, what does a knife really show in that situation? It shows that you were willing to die 15 times in a row to make a point. And I see what you mean with the snipers. Like, it can get frustrating when you have people on your team wasting tickets, trying to be
I was playing with my
quick scoper.
Yeah, I was playing with some guys that I play with. I won't name their names, just a couple of guys that I regularly play with, and we'd played a few games, and to be honest, we were just kind of, the evening was like winding down. We were playing close quarters, and I was still in the kind of mindset of like, play the objective, play the objective, play the objective. So I was like running around, capping bases, clearing guys out, and being generally quite kind of efficient, and they basically decided that they were going to start screwing around with like M60s and C4, just throwing C4 at people and detonating it in the air and stuff like this. And as fun as it was for them, we lost a very easily winnable game, like really easily winnable. But it was like the rest of my team were trying to just defend C for the entire round, and I was basically the only person running and capping bases. And when we got to, we were towards the end of the round, and I think, I can't remember, just a guess off the top of my head, maybe we were at like sort of 60 and the enemy were like 100 and oh, actually no, that wouldn't make sense. Basically they were winning by, I don't know, like 80 tickets or something, so it was still winnable, but like, we were losing reasonably. And one of my guys was like, guys, maybe we should focus a little bit on what's going on, and they're just running around, oh my God, I blew that guy up, and it's just like, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't fussed about it at the time. I wasn't that bothered by it. I was like, whatever, they're just being stupid and I don't care. But I think, if you're going to screw around like that, it does ruin games for other people, and if you're going to do it, you should at least try and play on maybe your own server or with people you're going to play with. But people are going to do it whatever, so it's just my opinion, but I wouldn't just go into any random public server and just do that all the time. I mean, one game's alright, I guess, but anyway, I don't know, there's people always going to do it. You can't really stop it, it's just what people do, but I don't see the appeal myself. And the other thing is, I love it when people go, Luetin, just have fun. Yeah, just have fun. Why you take it too serious? And it's just like, I like playing serious. That's not fun to me. And fun to me is playing really sort of serious, and that's what I really like. I mean, I've always liked playing like that. And when I played WoW as well, and I always talk about WoW because it's I played it for like 4.5 years. I can't not talk about it. And and everything I did in that was the same. Just. I like to keep my game playing like really tight. I like to, be as sort of play it as well as I can, which often isn't as well as I would like, but so.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you, or at least I was before I started playing a lot on PC, because if there's one thing, which this is just going to reinforce our point earlier, is like on the 64 person servers, I feel like you can disappear and you can just do whatever you want. It's like I'm just, one of 64. If I'm going to run around with an ATV with C4, it's not really going to hurt the team. And I find myself doing that a lot in those servers. And I think about how I used to play. I used to play so serious. Like I used to be like on top of it. I would move about the map so like meticulously. I would be looking at all my corners. And like now when I go back and I play, I look at some of my games and like, man, why on earth did I make such a stupid move? And
Yeah.
I think it's just, like I said, a lot of the new things in the community of gaming in general. It's not just, I don't think it's really in any particular genre of gaming. It seems like it's like the ADD mentality of
Yeah.
game styles. So I think I fall victim to that just as much as the next guy. But I can't say I've ever played WoW though. I
Really?
played a little bit back in the day. I played like a little bit of like the free trial once when I was in college, and
Yeah.
I wasn't a huge fan of it. I do think the pandas look cool.
It's life destroying, honestly. I still have people now saying to me like, go back and check it. My friend Andrea, she's always saying to me like, go back. She's like, dude, come back and play. I'm just like, no, I would literally cut the hot soul out of my life. I can't do it. It did consume me when I played it. I've talked a little bit. I keep wanting to make a big video about it, but I need to go and get some pics back so I can illustrate, and I want to get a few people maybe to talk about it and stuff. I don't know. I don't even know how many people would be that interested in it. Like it's it's a big deal to me, but that's probably because I'm like really nostalgic about it. I don't know whether people would actually care.
Yeah,
But
it seems like it's not as popular as it used to be by any stretch of the imagination.
the main reason for that is that I'll try and keep this really short because I don't want to ramble on. I could just chat about this for hours and hours. Like seriously, I could talk about it like for probably 5 hours just recanting his tales, but basically, some people will know this, some will not. It used to be that the way WoW worked was you would have these large groups of guilds or clans, if you want it. I don't know why FPS calls things clans and online other things call it guilds. I don't know. There's no difference. It's just they choose to call it something else. I don't know. But in WoW, you had guilds, which was basically a clan. And within the game, so you'd have a large guild of people. You basically needed this to play some of the content in the game. And WoW has obviously always been subscription, so I don't know what it costs in the US, but it was like £15 a month here. So I don't know, maybe it's like $20 or something. Probably.
I think it was between $15 and $20.
Yeah, it would probably be 20. Yeah, and yeah, so basically what you'd have is you'd have like little quests that you would go and do, much like Borderlands or Fallout, and you just go and do your bits and pieces, and it would give you little rewards at the end, much like these open world games. And but then when you get further into the game, the only way you could progress was to join basically a guild, because the only content that was really left to you to do was these large scale dungeons, I guess you would call them. Think of like Zelda. You go to a certain place, and people would call it another time. You call it an instance, was what people used to call it. So you'd go to a dungeon or an instance, and you'd basically fight. But you would have to have a lot more people. Most of the time, you were limited to only 5 players. You would get together in like a little group of 5 players, like a little team, and go to these smaller dungeons, which you could raid and get a bit of stuff. But then the larger ones were the main ones that people really would, aim to clear. And you would have to play with about 40 people. That was the amount of people that you had to play with to clear these things. And Molten Core was the first one, and then there was one called Blackwing Lair. This was on the very early game, and then they opened it up with more DLCs. But basically, you needed a large amount of people to play, and it meant that the guilds within the game really had a lot of prestige, because the game was split into the 2 sides, Horde and Alliance, so they were kind of enemies. And yeah, basically your only way of playing these large end dungeons, which gave the best equipment for your characters, like the purple stuff, the really, really good equipment, the only way you could do it was to join a big guild. So like on my server, and then out of a server there's only usually a certain population, so it meant that on most servers you might have 3 or 4 big guilds, for each side. Okay, so and then out of those big guilds, they would only maybe have an average membership of about 200 players, maybe like 100 of those. I mean, 200 is quite a lot, maybe 100. I think ours did get to 200, but out of that maybe 100 was active players, and the other guys were casuals or alt characters. And so you'd often maybe have 2 teams would go to a dungeon, or maybe you'd even have just one main team and the other guys are like backups, or they go alternate weeks or whatever, and these large dungeons, they would take a long time to clear. You'd often start at sort of 7 in the evening and go through till 2 a.m. or whatever, so you'd literally start early evening and play all night solidly into the early hours of the morning, and you might not clear the whole area. You might have to come back and do the other half like the next day or whatever. So it meant that out of a week you might be raiding these big dungeons like 4 or 5 days of the week all evening, and then the rest of the time you're doing PvP fighting, or you're picking up other, you're gathering materials to be able to allow you to go to these places and stuff. But as I say, it meant that you ended up with like 3 or 4 big guilds, and they actually had like a lot of prestige. Now where I'm going with this is that what they did was they basically changed the game, because they realized, water just chatting. They realized that, or who is it? Blizzard, yeah. Blizzard, and it's Activision now, isn't it, they're with? They kind of realized that they'd sort of alienated a large amount of their subscribers, because there's a lot of people who were just kind of not good enough to join the guilds. They didn't have, maybe they didn't have the best kind of social skills to join, or and I don't mean that to sound no seriously. I mean, I don't mean that to sound like really negative. Some people would just kind of, they didn't have the right. Basically, like if you're in a 40-person raid, okay. It's really, really important that people were like switched on, clued up. And I used to lead these things with the guys that I ran with. So I would be in command of like 40 guys. I'd be telling them where to go, when we were going to proceed, which way we would go, make sure everything's set up. I had to know everybody else's role. I had to keep an eye on what it was when we were fighting the big bosses and stuff. And, so it was really like a lot of teamwork. And this is why as well, I say in my videos, I get pissed off when I play Battlefield and it's only like 10 people and half of them don't even know where they're going. And it's like, I've come from this kind of totally different game style where I've got 40, or they changed it up to some smaller ones, 20, or even 10, I think there was some that were 10 towards it. Yeah, there was 10. And all these guys where, basically the way it used to be was guilds. And this is where I'm going with it, you see. The kind of the prestige that the guilds were held in at the time was that, like, unless you were a really switched on player, you wouldn't be allowed to join, and you wouldn't be wanted. Basically, you had to be really dedicated, you had to be really aware. And like, when we used to go to like the big raids and stuff, whilst you would have someone lead the raid, they would basically manage all the other people, but the other guys who were there, it wouldn't be like I get to the boss fight and say, right, okay, healers or whatever, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. They would be expected to have gone and researched beforehand, know exactly what they had to do, so that when we got to the point of doing it, we didn't have to waste time, because these, it took so long through the evening that, you couldn't basically explain everyone what they had to do every time. So people were expected to research before, so that when you got to that point, you didn't have to say anything to them. And this was how it would work. So you'd have 40 people, all who knew exactly what they had to do, and all who had kind of maybe watched videos or kind of researched. You'd get to the fight, everyone would perform perfectly. It would be like bam, bam, bam. You'd do it really well. You'd go on to the next thing, and so on and so on. Now, sometimes we'd have like the odd mistake. A healer would
like Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know if that's real anymore. People said it was a setup, but it was still very funny at the time. But yeah, that was a great classic thing. Great, I have to say as well, great to I was in the period where that happened first off, and it's become like a big thing now. At the time, it was just kind of a funny little thing, and it's lasted a long time now.
Like when I think of WoW, like in strategy and stuff like that, like that's the one thing that comes to mind, because I do know that a lot of people like invest time into like ways they're going to move about the dungeons and stuff like that. Like you were saying, I think 40 people would get quite mad if one guy ruined their entire night over.
I sometimes, there's sometimes things that people. The important thing as a raid leader was that you would have to be able to aware and work out what went wrong, because sometimes you would wipe and everyone would be like, Jesus, what the hell happened? Because when there's 40 people all fighting and there's like spells and fighting all going off, and sometimes people are in a position where they can't see the whole picture as well, they can't see what's going on. So it was really important that you could look at what had happened, especially if you were like my guild. At one point, for about a year, we were pretty much like the top playing guild for our server, and so we were often going to places where there hadn't been first kills, and we had to genuinely like work out, okay, what's the best way to fight this guy, and we had to kind of just sort of play it by ear. We had to just work it out as we went along. So it's really important that as a whole team as well, everyone in your team had to be really clued up and switched on and intelligent, and be able to actually look, okay, what has happened, what went wrong, and other classes would be looking at other classes, and this is what was really good about it, was that like compared to Battlefield, like I say, not only was everyone really kind of aware of what they had to do, but they were also aware of what everybody else was doing as well. So as a warrior or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, I wasn't getting enough healing. I'd go back through, look at my, be like, yeah, I didn't get enough here, this is what killed me. You'd really sort of break down and analyze what had happened, and then feed back to other people, and then everyone would kind of pool their ideas and be like, okay, well, this kind of went wrong, so we're going to try this time. And it was a really, really strong environment to sort of play in, and I really loved it. But now playing FPS, it seems to be so the other way. Like, most people don't even care what everyone else is doing. They're literally got their own little agenda, and that's all they're interested in. And I have to say, it's so demoralizing for me sometimes. It really is. But basically, just to sum it up, the way WoW changed, and like you say, a lot of people are kind of turned off by it now. For one thing, it's kind of been around for a long time, and I think its kind of natural shelf life is kind of past. But what they basically did was, like I say, as I've explained, these big guilds basically became the only way that you could really play the game fully, because you had to be in them to get anywhere. And like I say, if you weren't at that level that I'm talking about, where people are really switched on, really playing well, and also you got the activity, some guilds wouldn't even consider you if you weren't prepared to play like 5-6 nights a week.
Wow, yeah, that's a huge commitment.
Yeah, and I don't just mean like beyond generally, I mean available from like 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. in that bracket. And like, if you were like a backup as well, like sometimes people would be in a guild as like a backup warrior. So like, I was like class leader, and we'd have like 8 warriors, so we would take maybe 4, and the other 4 guys are backups, but they still have to be online in case someone else doesn't turn up. So it's, this is what I mean. It's like there was a real expectation and stuff from other people. And yeah, so I think they kind of became aware of it, and I can kind of understand where they're coming from, because let's say you've got 2,000 people playing, maybe only 500 of those are in guilds, so that's a huge percentage of like your player base on that server who can't really get anywhere because they can't build these own guilds, or maybe they're not considered good enough or whatever. And what they did was they changed the game to make it so that smaller groups of people, or even individuals, could get really good equipment and stuff. But in doing so, they kind of they sort of, what would be the word, they
alienated
kind of
their old players.
No, they devalued like the kind of prestige and the worth that the big guilds had. And then all of a sudden it just became, everyone had good stuff, and so it didn't matter. Like, that was the thing, it was always like a big prestige to be like, oh, here comes Brain Dead, that was one clan, or my clan, which was Christ, what the hell was my clan called? I should so know that. Oh Jesus, I'm gonna kick myself, I have to remember. Lucid, yes, Lucid. My clan was called Lucid. And so when we'd been to a big dungeon, and then you'd come back to the home city, and everyone would like ride in at the same time, so we'd have like 40 people. It sounds kind of sad and pathetic, but at the time it was really cool. It was really cool. Like, you'd have 40 people and they'll ride into the city, and everyone's like, oh my god, Lucid's back, blah blah blah. And everyone would be asking like, if you got the kill, did anyone get new equipment, etc. So it was like a really big deal. But all of that kind of fed in, like, it made the community, because it was like a bit roleplayish, I suppose, which is never, I don't think it's ever a bad thing. Like, I mean, if you're playing games online, you're already kind of indulging in a little bit of a kind of sort of fantasy, aren't you? Because like, even if you're playing Battlefield, you're kind of, you're imagining yourself like there, so it's kind of roleplayish in a way. I think any kind of escapism is kind of roleplayish, and I think a lot of the time WoW just kind of took that as well. So everyone would come back, and people would be like, oh my god, they're back, blah blah blah. And but then when they kind of expanded it and made it so that everyone could get stuff, that never happened, because it didn't matter, because people were like, oh, I've got my own shiny, I don't care what they have, and I think at that point everyone just started getting sick of it, and the fact that they recycled the game so much as well. it literally was kind of variations on a theme. It's like how many kind of AI bosses can you realistically recycle and still make them interesting. That's one thing that is so good about multiplayer FPS, is that you're always playing against human players. You never know what they're going to do. You can't predict. You have to analyze and make your own choices on. That's something that I really love about FPS. And I think I was going to talk about this on a video. Did I talk about this on a video already? Maybe I did. I don't know. I think I did. Yeah, I did. I talked about it on the last Battlefield Roundtable. I asked the guys, this would be a good question for you, is like why you got into FPS, because you must have played other games as well. So what is it
this is a question I actually feel quite often. I actually touched on this in my question and answer I did the other day, but in particular, like FPS isn't necessarily the only games I play. Like it's just the only games I post on YouTube. And the reasoning behind that is just because I've always felt like my YouTube videos need to have some sort of substance or like, reason to post it, That's why I've never been a huge fan of Let's Plays. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them and they can be entertaining, but I always have like wanted to experience games like that for myself. So I'm a big fan of like Assassin's Creed and like certain role-playing games. Like I played Skyrim, I played I played so many games, it's hard to really narrow it down, but it's like, Dark Souls, that's a game I'm playing right now. So I would say FPS was a game that I used to despise, and I really do think that me as a person kind of evolved into FPS with Halo. And I know that was quite a while ago, but before that, I was never a huge fan of it. And Halo kind of brought me into it. And ever since, I've been really big on like popular shooters like Halo, Call of Duty. Like I played a lot of Call of Duty 2 when it came out for both Xbox and PC. And it's just the action, the pacing of the games is what kind of keeps me entertained by it. I think that's why it has such long lifespans on some of these first-person shooters.
I'll tell you something else that's really good about Battlefield compared to COD, actually, is that I never found very often that when I played COD, I would discuss it the next day. I never found that I would kind of have a really good... Because most COD games don't last that long. That's the problem. They're often only like 10 minutes long, maybe, if that. And I think often you would have so many COD games a night. Like if you play the same amount of time as you might play for an evening of Battlefield, you'll get maybe 2-3 times as many games in Call of Duty as you would in Battlefield. You might look at that as a good thing. On the other hand, you can look at it that you have so many games that they don't really you don't really remember any of them. They all kind of just blur together. And I think that's why COD can get so repetitive so quickly, is because all the games kind of just blur together and nothing really stands out to you. You might have the odd moment where you like jump off a building and like shoot some guy in the head mid-air and you're like, oh my god, it's amazing. But it's kind of few and far between. Whereas with Battlefield, I find nearly every time I play, there's like one game that maybe lasts a little bit longer or it's a bit more difficult to overcome. And I always find myself discussing it, going like, oh, do you remember like the other day, we were coming up that hill and the guys in the building shooting down and we had to flank them and take that tank and we got them in the end. And, there's always like a bit of a story to it almost. And I don't know if you found that as well, that compared to other games, that Battlefield sort of stands out like in that way more.
Yeah, I do see that because like some Battlefield games can unfold like so much differently than a Call of Duty game. Like I said earlier when we first started talking about Call of Duty, is like it's pretty predictable.
Yeah.
From one night to the next, the games are going to play out the same. Like if you're playing Black Ops Nuketown, one person's going to get spawn trapped on the other side. They're going to hide behind a truck. The game's going to end. Whereas with Battlefield, it's like the game could unfold in so many different ways. Like the game could go 40 minutes if you're on a high ticket server. I mean, you guys have that on console now, right?
We do have high ticket servers, but unfortunately it's kind of like become a bit of an epidemic that for a lot of people, that's all you can find. And even though there are servers where they're not, like for example, I keep my server on normal tickets, people just don't seem to want it, which is annoying because I tell you, actually, I need to make another video about this. The fact that basically people all the time going, hey Luetin, there's never anyone on your server. I'm like, I know, but that's not my fault, I advertise my server and I tell people to go there, but it seems that
that's
people
how mine was too. I mean, considering that I can push it pretty regularly and get it filled up, the problem isn't necessarily like your fans or like people that want to play with you that aren't filling it. It's like everyone else doesn't want to play in it because it's not 500 tickets, and 500 tickets honestly is ridiculous, even on
it's boring as well.
Oh my gosh, like I cannot stand these rush servers that are running now on PST that are like anything that's over 150 is ridiculous, and even 150 is a lot. Unless it's like maybe 64
I
players,
don't
but
even
anything
understand why
after
they
that, it's like
allow
you
it.
can't win on defense. It's
Yeah,
impossible.
I don't understand why they have it. I will say that we have won like a 300% round before, and I remember Noz, who I play with all the time, and we started this round on Grand Bazaar, and he was going, "Luetin, this is stupid. This is a waste. We're never going to be able to win this." And yeah. I said, let's just play it and see how it goes. We got to like the third base. They couldn't take us. It was really good. We locked down the kind of entry points, and we stopped the tank coming up, and I think I was running like an 8-scope sniper rifle, and we were just picking people off, and they couldn't get down, and it was really funny. We just locked them down, and the attackers, we just kept cutting them down again and again, and it lasted a long time. It was like a 40-minute, 50-minute round, I think, but we won in the end because they just couldn't get past us. And also, it didn't help that on their team, because I think they were a bit overconfident. They ended up with like maybe sort of 4 or 5 guys trying to snipe as well, but they weren't as good as us. And so we just were constantly like headshotting. And the thing is, like once you've started counter sniping, I often find this is like, if I'm in a game, sometimes I don't run sniper very often, mainly because I just don't find it's that useful. I know people use it as like a rushing class. That's generally the only time I would use it. Mostly is like if I want to set up recon points or whatever, which is really necessary sometimes. But actually running like pure sniper, I don't do it very often because it just tends to be not very, useful. And yeah. Sometimes if I'm running along or whatever, I get picked off by a sniper, and I'm just like, oh, for Christ's sake, because it is irritating. Immediately, you just go and counter snipe them straight away, and they're always going to be at a disadvantage. But it often makes me laugh that as soon as you counter snipe this guy who luckily hit you or whatever, and they just go back to the same place again and again, and it's like, really, how stupid are you? And I think it was this guy I was playing Death Valley, and this guy had got up on top of the building there, and he sniped me from somewhere, whatever, and I tried to go back to where I was to try and get eyes on him, and he sniped me again, and at that point I was like, I was really angry. So I went to like a completely other position on the map, a bit further away, got my bipod rifle and stuff, set it up because I needed it. It was like a long range, and I spent ages kind of lining it up, working out my distance, etc. Took him out really clean. And once I got the range, and he didn't know where it had come from either, because I made sure I was in a kind of non-specific piece of ground, so I wasn't next to a building or anything. It was quite tricky for him to see where it had come from, but also I kind of relocated ever so slightly each time, and I think I counter sniped him like 5 or 6 times by the end of the round. And I saw he was just like he had like a respawn up there, which made it even better for me, because it meant that I could just literally focus on that point, and every time I just see him respawn. And the thing was, I didn't this is the other mistake people often make sniping, I find, is they just start firing randomly rather than waiting for the perfect shot. I knew he didn't know where I was, so I would just follow him with my scope, and he would just like move back and forth and back and forth. I think he was trying to like psych me out or something, when people do moving left to right all the time. And he would just move left and right and left and right, left and right. And then he'd realise I hadn't fired, so he'd think, oh yeah, I've got bored and gone away or something. Then he'd start just staying stationary again. Ping! Yep. And then just like hit him. And I got a few abusive PSN messages, but it was quite funny at the time.
Yeah, because I consider myself a pretty above average sniper. Like when I first broke into the Battlefield community, like one of the things I was doing a lot of was like aggressive recon, because, I've always
aggressive
been a huge
recon.
fan
I love that.
of the recon class in general. And
yeah, so when are you not aggressive?
Well, yeah, I think that's a good point. But then you think about the stigmatism behind a recon player, and it's lazy. And I was trying to make videos that kind of change that mindset. Said like, okay, here's the power of the recon class. Use the spawn beacon, get behind people. You can actually do work with the sniper rifles. And it's funny that so many people don't use the semi-autos. And it kind of boggles my mind that it's not more popular. And like, when I would do videos on semi-autos, people would be like, oh, that's a noob weapon. And I'm like, what makes this a noob weapon? I don't understand. I mean, you got to think about it. Some of the semi-auto snipers, you can kill with an M16 faster at range than some of them, because they are like a 3-hit kill. So they do take some skill and precision. Like a silenced semi-auto sniper can actually be very effective behind enemy lines. So I was doing a lot of stuff with that, and it just seems like the Battlefield community just absolutely hates recon players. I don't know what it is. It's just
I think they associate it naturally with
lazy.
With a lot of stationary and a lot of low KDs, so they consider it not very constructive. But like I say, I don't consider it that useful a class, because I think often people kind of, I tell you why it is. It's because most of the other classes like support, engineer and assault are quite flexible. They can kind of work at medium, long and short range, whereas sniper classes tend to only be good at kind of long range to medium range, generally not so good in short range, and also they tend to be only that usable against infantry. However, they do have the SOFLAM, which is very, very useful, and they do also have the Recon points, so they have some good attributes. But yeah, like you say, some of the semi-autos. What's the first one? Is it the M11?
MK11 mod.
MK11.
That one is not very good in my opinion.
I tend to. I've been quite. I use it sometimes. I don't mind it, but I use it as like an assault rifle. I don't snipe with it.
The thing about that one in particular is it's just a rechambered M16.
Yeah.
So it has very similar reload speed. So that's one of the cool things about it. But the problem I have with that is, in particular, is the longer ranging like shots with that one. Like I tend to, if I'm going to use a semi-auto, I tend to use the QBU.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Because it's a bullpup, and it's actually like it's just like a semi-auto assault rifle.
It is quite nice as well. Yeah, I think either of those would stack up quite well. Yeah.
The M39's not bad, but
yeah, I don't mind it because the M39, yeah, that's all right as well. But I like the MK11. I don't know. This is the thing. This is why I don't often do weapon reviews, because they're often very stat based and stuff. And I don't know. Often when I'm using weapons, I do tend to go off the feel. And I also say that like when people do weapon reviews and stuff, for as good as they are, I always feel like, for sure they provide like a kind of a guide, so people can kind of look at it and go, oh, I hadn't thought about that or whatever. But just my own personal opinion, I tend to feel like, guns are so individual anyway, depending on how a person plays and the way they want to work and so on, that the best way to learn about a gun is to just pick it up and just find out if it works for you, But I can see the merit, but for me, the other thing is, so many people do weapon reviews, and like yourself, you do really excellent ones, whereas there's a lot of people out there who just do poor ones, and they do it because it's an easy thing to think of to do. But it's one of those things where they're easy to make, but they're hard to make well. That's the thing, is to make a good weapon review which really provides good content. And I don't want to be hating on other YouTubers. But people often say to me as well, they're like, oh, Luetin, you so want to be Xbox Ahoy and all this kind of stuff because of my voice, And the thing that's funny about that is I really don't like Xbox Ahoy. I know people will be like, no, like make cross signs at me or whatever. But I never really get on with his stuff. One thing, his stuff is very entertaining. This is actually leading me on to something else, and we need to finish things because we're heading towards an hour and a half. Xbox Ahoy. I want to make it clear. Like, I don't have any problem with him. Like, his content is really good, but sometimes, and I never really noticed. And in fact, actually, I started watching his stuff back when I used to play COD, and I really liked it. And then a couple of my guys in my clan started pointing out, have you not noticed how often quite his advice is very simplistic? And I was like, I didn't really notice. And it's stuff like, using a red dot sight will help you to aim better. And it's like, wow, really? The other thing that I hate is when, I think there was one, it was like a burst fire weapon, and it was going, the burst difference between, the difference between the bursts is 0.3 of a milli. And it's like, honestly, I don't want to swear too much, but seriously, 0.3 of a millisecond, really? You think that makes a difference? Honestly,
yeah,
you think that
I
makes
agree
more?
with you, because
you think
I
that makes more of a
problem.
difference
Like,
than shooting someone in the back?
I try to blend my real life, obviously not real life, my in-game experiences with the weapon and stats, and like oftentimes, like I'll be talking like just offhand about like a weapon stat, and I'll be off by like literally a millisecond. You'll have that guy. It's like actually, the M416 is 0.04 seconds faster on the reload than the M16, and I'm like, really?
I hate this.
Honestly, you will never benefit from that. In no situation will you ever benefit from a millisecond faster reload. It's just impossible.
Yeah, and it's that kind of thing that bugs me. Actually, this brings me on to another one. What the hell was I? I've forgotten what I was going to say now. But yeah, it brings me on to my other thing, which was stats. Okay, people love stats. I think they like stats because it gives them a hard reference point to argue over. So they can say, well, actually, this gun is better, or, you'll do better, or look at your stats. Like, for example, I posted my video of tank superiority, and a comment that someone made was like, tank superiority is really fun, but it screws up your SPM, your score per minute. And I was just like, yeah, well, that just shows how utterly stupid score per minute is. I hate it when I see people like going and they're looking at people's stats and be like, yeah, he's got a really amazing score per minute, or yours is bad. Just like, score per minute, that literally just shows, like, that could vary so much depending on the game you're playing, the map you're playing, the team you're playing with, your own personal play style. And to be honest, you might actually not be that helpful for your team if you're racking up a high score per minute by just rezzing people all the time, and it could really be screwing it up. So it's stuff like that. Score per minute, it's just meaningless. And accuracy, another one. I mean, I talked to Level a little bit about this, and I think we mentioned it on one of the videos we made. Accuracy, it's meaningless. It really is.
Considering I play support a ton.
Yes.
I don't care about bullets because you have infinite bullets. Who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
you set up a bipod, you're suppressing. I mean, I've genuinely been in situations where I'm laying suppressing fire. I'm not even trying to hit. I'm just putting rounds down to intimidate them. Because, if you're coming into Metro and there's some guy down there with a bipoded machine gun just going ba 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 ba, and all you can see is like a wall of bullets coming at you, you're not wanting to stick your head out there, because if someone does get in the way, they're going down. And it's stuff like this, and I really feel like I would be really interested, and I would respect a main FPS developer like Battlefield or COD or something to take a step and say, we're not going to have stats in the game, and they just take that ability to see your stats out. I don't think it's going to happen because they know how much people love that crap. But for me, I really feel like it's one of the elements, not the only thing, but it's one of the elements that kind of spoils gameplay, because people get so hung up on it, and it's pointless. It really is pointless. Your KD, KD again. I can't think of any stat really. I mean.
To me, like,
yeah, what do you think?
I can see where KD is pointless, but to a certain extent, I see KD as the only stat that is really, truly a measure of whether or not you can tread water. But then again, you think about Battlefield 3, and it's like, does that really matter? Considering that if you go 9-15 and you win the game, you're probably going to feel a lot better than the guy who went 30-5. But got whooped by the other team, because I've said this before on my channel. I was like, man, I would rather go negative than lose the game.
I've had so many games where I have been the only, and I don't like to sort of, I have games where I play poorly or where I'm doing something with my own agenda, but I've had a lot of games as well where I am literally the only person trying to properly defend, or the only person who's trying to defuse, and I get punished for it, mainly because my team aren't supporting me and I'm the only person in there, but I still manage to get like lucky diffuses, or maybe I'll, it's armed, I go in, I get killed, I go in, and that third time in I managed to get a diffuse or whatever, and by that time the team has come up and they're ready to support. But in the meantime, I've been getting spanked because like no one was there to help me or whatever, but it needed to be done. And this is the other thing, is often when I'm in a game, there's certain things sometimes that you've got to do. You've got to take, there may be a tank in place or something, right? And I'm the only person that can get there to deal with it, or I'm the only one who wants to try and deal with it. And I'll be fighting against this tank solo and it'll kill me like 3 times, 4 times. Finally I'll take it down, and then it kind of eases pressure off of whatever position we're in, that we can move forward or whatever, or we can manage to get a proper defense set up, etc. But there's so many situations where, or maybe we just happen to be on a bad team for one round and I get absolutely caned because of it, because literally a whole one side of our base is open and we're constantly getting dominated all the way, and sometimes you just can't get started no matter how hard you're trying to fight, because there's you're always facing 5 or 6 people all the time. I mean, close quarters was another good example. Was that I was talking about momentum, moving fast, and to my own detriment, I should have realized sooner, but it was kind of like I was moving so quickly to cap other bases that the rest of my team was never with me. So I would get to the base and I would be there and I'd be like, yeah guys, I'm what no, and then all of a sudden there's like 4 or 5 guys there and I'm like, take down like 2, but I get killed, and it's stuff like that. And the thing is, I can see sometimes where, you know, it'd be nice to look at your stats and be like, yeah, I've improved. Yeah, maybe I've improved. However, in the scale of things, it really does not matter. I think we would be better off without it, because for as many times as you can say, well, you know, it's a nice thing to be able to see, I just think it has no real merit within the game, and I just think it's one of those things that people get way too hung up about, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the things that's here to stay, though, because I mean,
yes,
look at Medal of Honor. They're using battle log for that because people, they're obsessed with
that's
them.
it. Yeah,
they're
people love it.
obsessed with stats. Just the nature of an FPS these days, I guess.
But that's and I guess you know, I think it says a lot about where FPS is than anything else, which I guess is not necessarily great. It also shows that they're more willing to listen to the money than listen to, you know, perhaps the best content, the best ideas, which again is perhaps not so great. I mean, there's loads of other things. I have to say as well, right? Normally we don't talk about one topic so much. We have talked about Battlefield for nearly this entire thing, but perhaps that's because we haven't had these long chats before, so we're getting it all out. But you know, one thing that I've mentioned as well about is the fact that you know, Battlefield has done very different DLCs, and I find that kind of interesting that they've done these different DLCs. And I have made this point before, so we won't talk about it too much, but you know, I find it kind of interesting, like you say, you know, Armored Kill and Close Quarters, and we were talking about how Karkand worked better, probably because Karkand had slightly more balanced maps than these other ones. These other ones have been very, very specific. But I said, you know, one of my ideas was, have they deliberately made them really specific so they can gauge the popularity, so when they go into Battlefield 4 they can be like, okay, this Armored Kill one, it didn't go down so well, so we won't bother with that in Battlefield 4. We'll tailor our maps to what are the most popular, therefore selling more units and just generally having a more popular game, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that see, it's a fine line to cross when you're talking about particular DLCs. That's why I'm so curious on like Aftermath. Like, what are your expectations for that? Are you expecting it to be a blend of Close Quarters and
we talked a little bit about this. I do. I think it'd be a blend of I think it'd be a blend of Karkand and I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, me and Level kind of speculated that it would be basically like medium to short range engagements, light armor vehicles and stuff like this. So maybe you'll see like, imagine perhaps Grand Bazaar, but more Karkandish, if that makes sense. I don't know.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I imagine kind of like more urban environments and light armors and stuff like that. I was saying, like, imagine like Toyota pickup trucks with a machine gun on the back, that kind of thing, you know. So we'll see. I mean, it's a bit early to speculate and stuff. But yeah, did you say there's a trailer tomorrow?
Yeah, there's supposed to be. I mean,
so it's supposed to be a premium.
It says
trailer,
on
guys.
the premium calendar that we get a Battlefield 3 Aftermath preview or something. So
it'd be interesting.
I don't know. They've been pretty bad about following that though, because if you recall, they were supposed to give us something way back when, and we ended up getting an art book.
yes, exactly. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I said I didn't mind that. It gives me new material to make thumbnails from. So
yeah, I thought about doing that, but everyone was saying like they were giving out copyright strikes if you distributed it, so I tried to stay away from it.
That's a good point, actually. I did not think of that. Yeah, but okay. So what was the last thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, okay. This is my last thing, and this is good because it kind of leads away from Battlefield a bit. I was thinking about making a video soon, which I may discuss this, but just see what your thoughts are about this. I was just thinking in general how many games there are with guns. And I was just thinking, Christ, we're kind of saturated with it. And also then I went on to thinking that it's not even so much just guns, but just general killing. Now, I want to be clear about this. I don't mean it in a kind of morally reprehensible way. I mean more the fact that it's kind of tediously repetitive, that so many games just require you to sort of eliminate enemies of whatever kind, be them, you know, sort of strange mushrooms or you know, dinosaurs or whatever, or just, you know, humanoids of some whatever kind, be they, you know, Killzone or Battlefield or Call of Duty. So many games just require you to have this kind of challenge of this is the enemy and you eliminate them. I really wish there was more games like did you ever play Riven and Mist?
No,
you didn't. But there's, you know, games like that, and you know, Journey, which came out recently. I maybe have seen. No?
No. Is that what's the game style on
You've
that?
missed out. Seriously. Well, you can check it out. You can go to my channel and check it out after this. Journey is a really amazing game, and I feel it's getting a little bit too popular recently. It's a bit irritating when games become like they're very kind of popular in their own right, and then they sort of get a little bit too hyped to the point of becoming slightly pretentious, which is a bit irritating. But it's still a really excellent game. Journey, it's best to just see it. You won't be able to really kind of appreciate if I just explain it. But basically, you're a character and you just go on a journey. But there are kind of puzzles and challenges along the way, albeit not very complicated puzzles. But, it's kind of all just sort of an environment. But it is the idea about the process of just moving through. And some sequences in it can be quite kind of emotional almost if you really get drawn into it, and if you're kind of in that mindset. Some people are not, and they just literally, I'm jumping up here and blah blah blah. I always feel like people that play games like that kind of miss out on the main point. They've kind of missed the whole point of what they were playing in the first place. They may have well just gone and played Sonic or Mario or whatever. They've kind of missed the entire point of what the game was trying to do in the first place. Yeah, I mean, but even getting back to platformers all require you to kind of eliminate enemies along the way. And I guess, not everyone wants the same kind of thing. Like sport games don't require you to kill people, but they're sport games, and I don't like sport that much. So, but I don't know, what do you feel? Do you feel like there should be more games which kind of, think of stuff like, did you ever play or watch Heavy Rain, for example?
Yeah. That's kind of similar to, I think, as how I'm expecting Journey to look, right? Kind of like that.
No,
you move. It's not.
It's not like Heavy Rain for sure. You'll see, but it's all about kind of like a movement, a process. Yeah, it's like you have a starting point and you work through to the end. And I guess Riven and Mist are very much the same, but Riven and Mist, if you've never seen them, you should check out as well. I've actually got Riven playthrough on my channel as well. But Riven is a very more kind of complicated puzzle. It's also a curious game. It's very old now. It would have come out like 1990, 93, something like that. So it's pretty old. Yeah. And that basically just worked by having still images, and you move from one to the next and you kind of work through, and there's puzzles to do within it. But it also has like animated sequences as well. So it's not just clicking through stills. You have sort of animations built into it. It's kind of, again, one you need to kind of look at, I guess. But I guess what I'm saying, it's not so much a specific game style, but I like the idea of having more games that are the emphasis is on perhaps the story rather than the action, and that you still have a lot of involvement. There's still like a lot of thought process where you have to maybe work things out for yourself and so on. But I just feel like, sometimes you want the content, but not so much the action, I don't know. Do you ever think that? Do you ever think that would be a good thing? It could just be my age. But
I think I've noticed a large surge in the return to like popularity of those type of games. Because like if you look at it, I don't know how popular these are outside of America in particular, like the Walking Dead series and like the Jurassic Park series, kind of those action adventure type games. It seems like there's been a huge kind of rediscovery of those, because I don't know if you've ever played have you ever played Nintendo DS games?
No.
There's this one that's like the Curious Case of like Professor or something or rather.
Yeah. It's stuff like that.
That's a good example.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
like Phoenix Wright, even that. It's like one of those games where you're not so much in actually controlling a character rather than experiencing the game as the character. Like a lot of the stuff is just you making the choices, you playing throughout each individual action and stuff like that. And it seems like those games have kind of gotten more popular lately, which is kind of surprising considering that, like we've been kind of reinforcing the point, the ADD mentality of a lot of people. It seems like people maybe are actually getting tired of first person shooters. I think
when you think about it, did you ever play as well Broken Sword? Did you ever play that game?
Oh, I know what that is. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, Broken Sword as well. Actually, I wonder what the hell... They must have a title. I don't know what genre they would actually fit into. Whether they're point and click games, I'm not sure.
They're technically called adventure. Like that type of style is called quote, adventure games. Like Myst, the original Myst game where it was like a story basically.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of what it is.
Mist
I mean,
was
it's just
incredibly
evolved.
difficult though. Mist was more difficult than Riven, I swear. Seriously, it's really hard. But yeah, I think the point is that it all comes down to developers not having the balls to actually try and make some of these games because they don't consider it a safe bet. That's what it really comes down to. But you know, like I've said before, with my own sort of personal projects and stuff, you know, if you don't make stuff, or if you don't try and put videos out, like my channel, okay, I know that if I put a Battlefield video up there, I could literally just be talking about anything to do with Battlefield, and it'll probably get me 1,000 views, right? However,
Even if you don't talk about Battlefield, you
yeah,
probably...
well, no, but I could just put up gameplay, you know, and because a lot of people come to my channel, like you guys are listening to me right now, okay, a lot of people come to my channel because of my Battlefield content, because yeah, that was the primary thing that I focused my channel on, okay, so that's fine, you know, that's fair enough, and I'm quite happy for that. However, I do enjoy other things, so I make other games as well, and they do, you know, they don't do as well. However, they have been doing much better than when I started, and this is the point, you know, they've doubled in kind of view count. So maybe now when I put up a video of something, it gets like, it used to get 200 views, now it gets 600 views. So my view count of my other games that I play has increased because more people watch that stuff now. And I guess this is what I'm saying within the kind of larger context, is like, if you actually make this stuff, people will come and get it. But if they don't take the risk to try and put it out there, then you know you just do get all the same stuff. But yeah, that's why games like Riven and stuff, I mean Mist and Riven, right, the Mist, when they actually made that game, they didn't anticipate it to be popular at all. They literally thought, oh, we'll be lucky if we sell like 1,000 copies of this game. It ended up to be one of the most, you know, successful games of pretty much all time, I guess. I don't know, it's so popular. It's so popular you can still even get it now on the iPad and the iPhone. You know, people can buy it. Yeah, you know, and you know, it's still around, and this is a game that's got to be, I don't know, 20 years old or more. You know, it's still around because it's still the original premise of the game still functions. It's a story, right? So it doesn't matter that the graphics are 20 years old. It's still, you know, it still actually looks good as well, you know, for its time. Despite the graphics being not like, you know, what they are today, they don't look that bad. And I guess that's what I'm saying, is I really personally would like to see more stuff which is kind of story based, and you can get more out of it than just constantly defeating enemies of any kind, be them shooting or jumping on their head or whatever. I just feel like that, you know, after playing games for however long I've been playing games now, which I don't know, 20 years, I don't know, 20 years, let's say 20 years is a long time. After playing this, I've bopped a lot of enemies on the head, and you know, it starts to wear a little bit thin. Maybe, as I say, I'm being a bit cynical and I've just been playing it too long, but the games like Journey and stuff really refreshed it for me, and it made me think like, yeah, you know, you can get a hell of a lot more out of a game than just defeating enemies. I mean, can you think of any kind of situational or story base? I mean, like detective games. Oh yeah, you know, a good example would be LA Noire. Okay, same thing. LA Noire, did you ever play that as well?
Yeah, I did play portions of it.
Yeah, I mean, LA Noire is very much, it's kind of on the par, isn't it? It's kind of it's on the.
Yeah, I think it's on the. See, it's one of those games where it's like,
it's sort of in between, isn't it? Which is
you
a very
don't really
good one.
have to be good on the sticks. Like, it's not like a challenging game. It's more like it's like a thought-provoking game.
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah,
there are some
more
instances where you chase people on rooftops and
yeah,
try to get them. But I think for the most part, it's mostly story-driven, mostly you experiencing it from that character.
I would really like to see more. I mean, I would really like kind of a good sort of detective game where you can really get stuck into it. And I mean that DS1 you said about is a sort of relative example of that. But I'm thinking more like, you know, there's a lot of good kind of police dramas on TV and stuff like this, which are quite in-depth, not crap stuff like CSI, but like actually good stuff. You know, where the characters are maybe a little bit dark, and you know, the story is quite in depth and so on. You actually have to figure things out as a character. You have to maybe, I mean, like Riven and Mist, you actually had to write things down, like, and there were some things that were randomly generated each time. With Riven, you have to work out, there's like a kind of the natives on the island where you are, they have like this kind of hieroglyphic numerical system, and you have to like decipher it yourself using this little puzzle. And then later on you find a book, and in there is this numerical system, and it's randomly generated each time, but you've only been given some of the numbers, so you then have to work out yourself what the code is and stuff like this. And you can only do that by basically writing it all down, so you have to keep your own journal as you play the game, so that you can
That's
work
pretty
out
intense.
yeah, it really is. It's a very difficult game. A lot of people never manage to complete it because some of the puzzles are so difficult, but they're not actually, they're not difficult, they're just logical. Like if you work through it step by step and you think, okay, what haven't I done here, then you will be able to complete the game, because it's all just a matter of logically working out, okay, I've done all of this and it doesn't work, so there must be something I haven't done. If you think about it like that, you'll complete it. But yeah, I would like to see more games like that. Heavy Rain in a way was a little bit of a letdown. It was good, but it didn't offer you that much. It was, like you say, one of these kind of QuickTime sort of games, where you just literally like XX
It's
square
like,
square.
yeah, press A really quick to avoid getting cut by this blade.
I got bored with Heavy Rain sort of partway through, and the what was it? Yeah, the FBI guy or whatever. Yeah, I just let him die. It was it was in when they were like the car crushing plant.
Isn't the moral of the story that you're actually a bad guy? Isn't that like the?
I don't know. I mean, there's various sort of elements that you can take from it. Overall, it was very interesting. It was a good ending that I got. But I should play it through again. Do you know what? I should play it through for my channel. Oh, that's a great idea. I'll write that down. That's a good one to play for my channel, because it'd be piss easy for me to make. No, it would be a good one actually, because it'd be good because was it on the Xbox or was it just PS3?
Just PS3.
Yeah, exactly. That's been another good reason, because I know a lot of guys that play are just PC only, so a lot of people really like Journey for that fact, because it's a lot of people were going, oh my god, I wish I had a PS3 now so I could play this game. And it's like, yeah, exactly. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, would you like to see more of that stuff? If you could have a game like this that was more thought-provoking, what kind of environment would you want it to be set in? Would you like a kind of noirish sort of detective thing, or would you want something more fantasy-ish like Riven or Mist that's kind of like quite outlandish? What would be
I think taking away from my my love of Mass Effect, I think like a space type game like that would be kind of cool.
Yeah,
like
that'd be interesting.
That was one of the things I did like about the Mass Effect series, even though it was a complete like downhill trek that game tended to go on. But
yeah.
There was elements of that game where you had to think it out. Like that's why I like the first one better than all of them.
Yeah,
because they changed it so much. They did exactly what we're talking about. They took it from being a thought-provoking game to being a game that was based on action. And I don't know, I think a true space, like I guess
opera.
Space soap opera type game would be pretty awesome.
It would be amazing. I mean, there's so many ways that you could take it. You could do it in a really kind of Riven style, where there's not a lot of other characters and you literally work your way around. You could imagine like a massive spaceship or something, and you wake up from why can't I think of the word? Not hibernation, like suspended animation, whatever. Okay, you're sleeping, wake up, and then maybe something's happened. You have to figure it out, and there's loads of you have to work your way around. That if you work that out, complicated. However, you could have a more kind of like a kind of large station aspect, kind of think Babylon 5, like massive spaceship, and on board are all sorts of different things going on, like people trading off against each other, and you don't know who you can trust and all this kind of stuff. So there's loads and loads of things you could do with that. I mean, it could be on a planet or it could be on a ship. I mean, yeah, there's loads to it. I really should be a game developer. There's so many games I want to make. There's so many games I want to do. But yeah.
You gotta start a Kickstarter campaign.
Everybody goes on about this. It's like the kind of default answer for everything. What was it earlier? It's like, I can't remember. Guarantee. Just randomly click any YouTube video and people are like, yeah, do a Kickstarter. Okay, guys, I think we're going to finish up here now, seeing as this has drifted on for an hour and 45, so I'm going to have some fun editing up. I just want to thank Jake intheworksmedia for joining us here this evening.
No problem. Thanks for listening to me ramble, guys.
And yep, some more discussions coming very soon, guys. I've got a good one coming up on the future of gaming. Hopefully have that next week. But this and some more Battlefield stuff coming very soon. Hope you've enjoyed. Please leave your comments and like, share, subscribe as always. Thanks for watching, and see you very soon.